Good day, podcast community. PeteKane here, Podcast Pete. I got a special guest with us today on a snowy day in Atlanta. What do you do when it snows? You do a podcast. So, John, tell our viewers so they know who they're listening to, who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
My name is John Butler. I'm in the senior care industry, really as the chairman of the Atlanta Senior Care Network organization. We have about 500 members, all of whom serve seniors, aging population, primarily in the area of health, but it's really health and wellness and well-being, and including lifestyle. So it may be transition from a home a person's lived in for 50 years into a senior living community, or it may be a person that's coming out of the hospital and needs someone to stay with them and help them get through the transition, and really anything in between. So our members represent families and work with families who have an aging loved one who is struggling in some way with cognitive or physical disabilities and the normal aging process. So that's what we do. I'm proud to be a part of that organization. Been around one about 15 years, I guess now. So.
Mhm. So, with we do have the aging population and the senior needs are growing. What got you into that? I mean, how long have you been involved as the executive director?
Well, originally I was like a lot of people in this industry. I really kind of fell into it because my mother-in-law lived with us and moved in with us when she was very healthy and still drove and all that. And then as she aged, she lived with us about 20 years, the last 20 years of her life. She began to need the services that senior providers provide. I mean, she needed home health, she needed home care, hospice eventually, durable medical equipment, all of the aspects of aging we learned about firsthand because she needed those kinds of services. And there were some things she didn't need that were provided that other people, like for example, she didn't need to be in a memory unit. Although she did have some dementia issues, it wasn't debilitating. It really. So so that's how my interest in this started. And I ended up working for a company that did home care, and found it to be very gratifying, and found out that I could actually make a difference in people's lives, particularly the family members of the aging parent who is a very vulnerable part of their time in their life,
Mhm.
and to make a real difference in a person's life that's very vulnerable was pretty meaningful. And so it's always been. So I've been doing this about 15 years, and I really still really love doing it.
And outside of the obvious, which is serving, what gives you the most joy in your position serving with the CSCNN?
Well, you know, th- one of the things that I get a lot of joy out of is when I meet with someone who has a heart for seniors that really doesn't understand how to communicate that to people that could really benefit from that service they offer,
Mhm.
and help them understand a better way to communicate that, to connect with families in a meaningful way. And so it may get a little annoying sometimes, but when someone comes to an ASCNN meeting, or emails me, or wants to know what can we offer them, or how can they serve better, or whatever the question might be, to help them understand, yes, you have a heart for this. Yes, you may have started the same way I did because you had a family member that needed the services, but that's not enough. You've got to really learn how to communicate what you provide in a way that resonates with the person that's listening to you, or that's asking you, or that you want to listen to you, in a way that really connects with them. So you start with what is their need. You don't start with telling them what you do. They don't care what you do. They have a problem, they have a situation, they have an issue. You need to know what that is. And once you know what that is, you could say, well, there's a lot of different ways to approach that. Let me tell you what I think would be the best way or a good way to approach that. And you explain quickly how they might want to address that. And then you can say, the company I work with, we do that really well. Here's how we do that, and here's why that would be good for you. And
Mhm.
that's a very simple approach, but that's oddly enough, so few people understand that. They want to start with, here's what I do, and nobody cares.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do probably a good majority of the time I do hear that. And I do something similar. I just say, state your problem. Like, do you know how seniors have a hard time finding the right resources to serve their parents' needs? Or no, let's say adult children have a hard time knowing what's out there and available for their aging parents. I wait for them to say yes. Then I say, what I do is educate people on the resources to help their parents. So it's a state the problem and then give the solution, but wait until they lean into you. They
Yeah,
got to be curious. If you just like you said, if you throw up on people with a bunch of information, they're going to run.
yeah.
And that's,
So,
that's what I see, the same thing.
so when I first got into this industry, I was told I needed to go to networking meetings. So I went to a networking meeting, had no idea what I was going to do when I got there. I got there, had no idea what I was going to do while I was there. And it took me a while to figure out these are people that come together. They might be friendly with each other. They might be friends. They might become friends. But for the most part, it was a waste of time because they didn't really work the process. And it does to require work. It's fun to get together with people you like and once a month or whatever it might be. But few of us, I think, have the time to waste when they do that. It can still be fun to meet with people that you know and then meet somebody you don't know and another person, and you find out what it is that they do and what is it that what brings them here, and you find out ultimately what I call it is building your portfolio. It's really a matter of building a base of connection for people that you know well enough and feel like you can trust well enough to recommend to somebody, a family member of yours or someone that's like a family member of yours. This person can do something I can't do, and they can really help that person. And you only can only do that because you know that person, you've met them, and you've talked to them, and you understand kind of where they're coming from. And that's really what networking is all about. And again, so few of even our members that have been around a while, I'm I'm frustrated that a lot of people just don't understand that's what the purpose of the meeting is. That's why they should be there. That's why when they come, that's what they should be doing when they're there. And
Yes.
actually had people say there are too many people here. Well, it's a target rich environment. Pick the one or two people that's going to make a difference, and just.
Yeah. No, that is funny because when you think about that, you're saying, I don't want to meet a lot of people. And you're not supposed to meet a lot of people, but go to a meeting and meet five new people that you've never engaged with
Right,
and get to know them, find out what they do, and how at times when you keep your ears open, you can understand that there's resources out there, but you got to get to know them. And if
right.
you don't get to know them, you don't know what they do. But yeah, that's funny. There's too many
So,
people.
so at our meeting yesterday, Jonna made a very good point. Jonna Payne.
Yeah,
At the end of one of our sponsors, we had two sponsors. One didn't even show up, but that's another story. But anyway, so Britt Adji is a great resource for us, and she has 4 minutes. We basically provide 4 minutes for a sponsor to share what they do,
yeah,
and I try to help them. And in her case, she knew what she needed to do, so I didn't have to coach her that much. But her message did not last 4 minutes, but it
yeah.
was powerful and it
Okay.
made the point. And when someone tells me I only have 4 minutes, I said, you've got 4 minutes, but plan on two. Come up with a message that communicates what needs to be communicated in two.
Hmm.
Well, I can't do that. Well, you know, it's it takes you 10 times longer to do a 3-minute message as it does do a 30-minute message. And the fact is, no one's going to listen to you for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Condense down to the point and keep practicing and working on that till you get the message that needs to be communicated in a short enough time that someone will actually hear you and remember what you said. So it's not that difficult. I shouldn't say that. It's obvious that's what needs to happen, but it seems difficult to get people to understand that and then to implement that when they do it. That was really well demonstrated yesterday in our meeting with Britt, and well articulated by Jonna afterwards. Let
Yes.
people understand that. One of
Yeah.
the challenges we have actually is fourth, a third to a fourth of our members don't come to meetings regularly. And I really am struggling with, I'm changing the subject slightly, if you don't mind.
No,
I,
no.
I really want to find a way to help those that haven't yet learned the value of coming to meetings or just can't make it or something, to still leverage their connection with this organization, um, to connect with and communicate what they do to other resources, even if they can't be at a meeting. And there's got to be a way of doing that. I don't know what that is. To me, it's all face to face personal stuff. But here, you and I are doing something we're not face to face. So there may be a way of doing this. I don't know what that is. I would really like to figure that out, because there are people that really provide significantly valuable services that a lot of our members haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
And yet they're part of the same organization. So that's a challenge that I would really like to address and figure out how to deal with.
Yeah, I think it's a skill in everything. When you said just in the beginning about when you went to your first networking meeting, you didn't have any idea what you were going to do. You showed up, they said you got a network, but you learned the skill of connecting, you learned the skill of communicating. And as a result of that, you're very effective. I kid with you that you could very easily do stand-up comedy and do very, very well. Now, I say that because people don't know you, but it's a natural thing that you're just there to have a good time and serve the people by communicating, and you do it well. What I mean, my question, and I always, when I watch people and I study people in human nature, I'm always curious of how did you get to that point? Like, you don't wake up one day and you're funny. That doesn't work that way. So what happened in your life that you use humor as a form of communication?
I have no idea. I can't believe you asked me that. I'll tell you what, though, there is a time, now that I think about it, I think I was already tended to have a sense of humor that I used sometimes more often than I should have, when even inappropriate. But there was actually a point in my life when my mother, who lived to be 100, when she was 98, we had to move her into a skilled nursing facility.
Mhm.
And she was cognitively pretty sharp, although at that point she was starting to blend people in her background that even lived at different eras in her life into
Mhm.
one story, like they were together. It was kind of a tapestry of little truths that were all interwoven. It was fascinating, really. Um, but she was starting to worry about things. She was stressed about things that she had no reason to worry about. She wanted to worry about money, for example. She didn't need to worry about her money, because my brothers and my sister and I, we'd worked. It was all worked out. It was no big deal. So she worried, and so I was over there. She After my dad passed away, she ended up moving to Atlanta and lived in Wesley Woods Towers for a while, and then she was at AG Rhodes, a skilled nursing facility right up the hill from Wesley Woods. So I was there pretty often because it was easy to go by and see her. And she was worried and stressed, and I was frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And out of the blue, just don't know, wasn't inspired. I don't know what the thing was. I just started talking about telling her stories, reminding her stories of things my brothers and I did when we were kids and funny things we used to do. And she started laughing and I started laughing and we were laughing together. And after about 20 minutes, I realized she was a different person than when I got there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there might be something to this. And I had been doing teaching some continuing education courses for CEU credit for nurses and case managers and social workers and stuff. And I started doing some research and developed a course on humor in healthcare and the therapeutic nature and value of laughing. And it really wasn't about humor. It was really about the physiology of laughing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And who knew? Come to find out, your physiology changes when you laugh.
It does. It
And
does.
so I taught that course for about a year, and then I developed another one that was similar, but it was building onto that for another year. And I found out that really, it really affects people in a positive way,
Yes.
much more than you would have ever dreamed it would.
Yeah.
So I'm a little less reluctant now. Sometimes I said, my wife will tell me sometimes I need to be careful what I say. My filter needs to be tweaked a bit.
I always tell people, let it rip. I know we're kind of sensitive to how people receive things, especially in the last few years. And I think the tide has switched to more like be yourself. And if you just let it rip and hey, if the person receives it wrong, hey, so be it. But
Yeah, well,
now here's where I want to ask you, because I don't know if you know a gentleman by the name of Tommy Stoner. He heads up the Army Rangers transition into civilians, and these are higher skilled veterans that they're trying to connect with high skilled opportunities in the civilian life. So he spoke at our Rotary, and he said, we're losing, I think it's 16 veterans a day to suicide. And so he said, he goes, a lot of people think it's PTSD, and there's certainly part of that. But he said it really gets down to purpose. Like
say that again.
purpose. It gets down to when we transition from a veteran transitions to civilian life, they lose their purpose. And if they don't get that purpose back, they can drift. And when they drift, it's just not healthy. So, but my question is, there's a thing called PTSG, which is instead of disorder at the end, it's growth. Where when people go through trauma, through stress, they have an opportunity to grow. And a lot of times people grow through humor, because if you study the past of people that go through a very difficult part of their life, they have to deal with it as a survival, and they deal with it with humor. And
Mm.
so I'll trace back and we'll talk about what happened in people's lives, because trauma is part of everybody's life. I mean, everybody has different types of it, and we have a choice to grow, or the drama owns us.
Yeah.
Has
It,
there been anything in your life because I know you're a veteran and I know you serve a veterans organization. Is there anything in your life that kind of was a path to growth and humor that you can maybe
well,
pinpoint?
it's interesting that you bring that up because I didn't know whether you and I had ever had this conversation before or not. I mean, I didn't even know if you remembered I was a veteran, but one of the things I had learned, when I came home from Vietnam, it was not a happy moment, and it was difficult, and um, I was as prepared, I think, as any civilian could be for what I actually experienced in Vietnam. I was just not prepared for what the coming home was like and the vitriol and all that. I didn't feel sorry for myself over it. I just ignored it and pushed it aside and moved on. But again, about 15 years ago, about the same time frame, I guess, now that I think about it, I became involved in this Atlanta Vietnam Veterans Business Association, and I learned um, by being involved in that organization that really does a lot to serve veterans, how therapeutic it is to help another veteran, to serve another veteran.
Hmm.
And I had done a little bit of therapy and it was not good for me. This is a heck of a lot better
Yeah.
for me, therapy. And I don't know whether the humor aspect of that has anything. I mean, I'm sure it's integrated into who I am, so therefore it's integrated into when I meet and serve with other veterans. But that by itself is not a discrete, a separate issue. It may just be part of it. But ultimately, the serving another person
Hmm. Hmm.
in general and serving another veteran in particular is is very therapeutic, very beneficial to me.
Hmm.
So, and I think it is true across the board. I think God created us that way, frankly. I think I
I do
think
too.
we are wired that way.
Yep.
Whether you realize it or not, when it happens, it resonates deeply in our soul because that's how God made us. That's how He designed us.
I totally agree. Happiness in America has been trending down in the last 10 years, and a lot of people will draw well, these are leading people I've heard speak on the topic. And one of the things we disconnect from people when we neglect the serving piece. Because like you said 15 years ago, when all of a sudden you started in this organization and you started serving, like just with ASCNN and with the veterans organization, you're there to serve those groups. And the joy that a person gets when they serve fills the heart, fills
Yeah,
everything. And I
yeah,
think that whenever people go through trauma, at least if they're talking to me, put yourself in a position to serve others. Yes, it happened to you. You lost a loved one. Now serve people that have lost a loved one. Then it never you never obviously can recover from that loss, but your heart can heal from the serving of a person that you're walking through that tragedy.
right, exactly.
What do you think that, not to get off ASCNN, but you brought up, with your veterans, do you see any difference between the service of both organizations? Like when you go serve as the executive director and serving that veterans organization, is there anything different in your mind because of your service in Vietnam to what you're doing with seniors?
I'd never thought of that. Um, I I have to say there's so much overlap. I haven't really thought about it before. Um, it's really the similarity. The difference is why they're vulnerable, why the person's vulnerable. The similarity is they're both vulnerable. A
Okay.
veteran, in fact, the conversation I was telling you about earlier that I just had before this call, I see that particular company has a solution that I think could make a vast difference
Mm-hmm.
in the mental health of veterans. But it isn't just veterans. But one of the reasons I think it would help is because veterans are not, in many ways, are not really prepared to be lonely. And part of the suicide issue is a veteran often, especially a combat veteran, that becomes alone later in their life cannot process that as well as maybe another person can. I don't know that yet for a fact. I don't have any statistical evidence to back that up, but I could see how that could be a problem. And that may be part of the reason why the suicide rate of veterans is higher than it should be. Whether it's higher than anybody else, I really don't know what the numbers are. So anything that could help that process could really be beneficial. But then again, you have a senior that who just lost their husband or wife and
Mm-hmm.
they're alone, including whether they're a veteran or not. the ability for that person to connect and stay connected, if that can be enhanced in some way, again, that's what I was talking about this other service that does that sort of thing. There is almost 100% overlap. It's just because they're different circumstances got you where you are doesn't mean that there's not the same kind of a solution. And the beneficial or the therapy of making a difference in that person's life is very similar, if not the same. Good point. I hadn't thought about it.
No, yeah, you're right. Because when you think, because I lived at Overture for almost 2 years, and I would, when somebody moved in, I would always try to get them connected. Because, when you're young, meeting new people is not as hard as when you're 75 years old and you have to go into a place where there's 175 people. It's kind of overwhelming that all these people, you don't know their name, and we got name tags for the residents to be able to help them connect, and we put a city underneath it. Oh, you're from Richmond. Hey, yeah, my cousin used to live up there. I've been there 10 times. Have you ever eaten at this restaurant? And it's amazing it's almost like Disney. Well, Disney does it. They have their name and then they have the city that they're
Right.
from, just so people can connect. And I think when you get a little bit older, your relationships tend to pare down when they should be pairing up.
Right.
That's
That's a
just
good point.
so connecting with people and getting people to not have that loneliness, because that's a recipe for just going downhill,
Yeah.
because you can't process things. I had a person move next to me, and so I went over next door and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, come on down to breakfast. I'll introduce you to some of the residents." She goes, "Well, I'm an introvert." I said, "Okay, we have introverts down there too." So, but I mean, we still need to connect. Everybody
Yeah.
has styles. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. They're not going to be the life of the party, but they're going to be part of the party, connecting with people. But it is interesting to see why there's only one organization. I could go to 10 networking organizations if I wanted to. I only go to one, and it's ASCNN. All the other ones, I stopped going to the local business one, because I'd have people on my show and I'd ask them, and I'd say, "Where do you get your business?" And most of them would say referrals. I said, "Okay, do you get any from this organization?" And she said, or they would say, "No." I said, "So why do you go?" "Oh, I think I have to be there." And I think people think they got to be everywhere. They got
Yeah.
to be everywhere. I mean, it's not go with one and go deep within
Yeah.
relationships. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I see in just my travels is everybody thinks that they got to be everywhere to be somewhere, but it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. That's
What
true.
would you say your biggest challenge with running ASCNN? Give our viewers like a little behind the scenes. Is it technology? Is there anything that just bugs you?
Um, like I said, really the only thing that comes to mind is maybe it's because it's what's on my mind lately. Is that the the connection to helping the challenge is helping our members. Ultimately, the challenge is communicating, is providing. Ultimately, it's the senior whose family just learned this person needs someone to help them and doesn't have a clue where to go to find that help.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, it starts with that. Then you have, well, a solution to that is you have an organization of colleagues that partner together to be available to help that person. And they need to be able to communicate to that person before they hit the wall that the solution is available. Then you back up. So that you start with that organization and say, how do those people learn each other learn to trust, know each other well enough to know who they can trust, and then to trust that person well enough to work together to provide that solution. And that's really what ASCNN is about, or at least what I want it to be about.
Hmm.
And I think we have a long way to go with that. It isn't so much the number of people that are involved, but when you have 500 members that pay and be a part of the organization, a subset of that, in other words, each person needs a core. Again, I think I referred to it earlier, a portfolio, a group of people that they know well enough and can trust that
Hmm.
there's a solution available that they can refer to just like that,
Hmm.
not a card catalog or a list, but say, Betty does something that does exactly what you need, what I think you need, and be able to refer to the just at our senior care expo we did at Church of the Apostles.
Hmm.
Someone came up to me and said, this person needs an elevator in their house and they need it yesterday. And I said, let me tell you who's here that can help you with that. Go over there right there and talk to that person. That's what they do. Just because I happen to know that person, it wasn't because I had a directory to go to or a
Hmm.
search engine to go to, because of the connection. And what that takes is knowing people takes effort to get in a room with this many people or an organization that big to figure out a way to connect with those, enough of those to have that put together. And my portfolio will be different than yours.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean mine better than yours. It means I know the ones in my portfolio. I know I can trust them. Same thing with you. Same thing with that person. That's the challenge, is to get people to understand that and to provide them the tools to make that happen.
Yeah, I think, having a circle of trusted people that you know that they're going to deliver because they know you and they value the relationship, and that when you say this is the person to put the elevator in, you know that that person has delivered time and time again. You know them, you trust them, you have a relationship with them. You have no problem immediately saying, this is who you should
Yeah,
talk to. Yeah.
right.
For those that are not familiar with ASCNN, and if Rand hadn't have mentioned you, I would have never known about it. Tell our viewers, like, what's the format? Like, time, what do you do? How is it set up so people can understand what they're attending?
Well, the group, we have a website, ascnn.org, and you can go on that website and learn when our meetings are. We have once a month we have a meeting. It's always the second Thursday of the month from 9:30 to 11. We're not really different than a number of other organizations that do something like that. We meet once a month. There are other organizations do that. Um, but but what we do at those meetings is typically every other meeting, we have a speaker with a topic that is of general interest, but is more than just a concept. It's very specific things, like our meeting yesterday. Uh, uh, Library services for the blind. Well, I asked at the end of the meeting, we had 120 people there. I asked them to raise their hands, how many people knew about that before the meeting. There were less than 5 people that raised their hands that knew about that.
Yeah.
There are people that are visually impaired that need to know that information, not necessarily tomorrow, but maybe next week.
Hmm.
And so you're better off to have that resource. And it's worth taking some time to learn about those resources. If you're really serious about serving aging people, there's going to be people that have blind or visual impairment that need to connect with the world through books and different things like that. So that's one solution. And then the other meeting, every other meeting, we tend to do some sort of a guided networking process, and that came about a few years ago when I realized that just open networking was not productive to a lot of people. It's okay for those that know how to do networking, So we do both. Every meeting we have open network working for at least 30 minutes and 45 minutes, give or take. So that's worth doing. Um, but um, uh, but we also do then we'll do a guided networking process that sort of more than encourages, it almost forces.
Hmm.
It really pushes people to go through the process, and you sort of like you fake it till you make it. You give a people a tool that can help them get to know somebody that they may not otherwise do, because that's the process we're involved in now. And
Hmm.
if you participate at all, you will start to learn, this actually can help me. This is a way I can learn someone and they can learn me. And after you meet 12 people in one day through the typical process like this, you find out, you know what, there are two or three people in there. It's worth following up with them to know who they are. And then if I do that, I might find out one of those people needs to be in my portfolio. Not
Hmm.
all 12 of them, not even three of them,
Hmm.
but that's a win.
Yes,
That's a win.
absolutely.
So that's the thing, to do it in person. Again, I'm challenged with the fact that there are potential services available for that would benefit our group that aren't necessarily just local.
Hmm.
So how can we make sure, if those services can be legitimately implemented locally, but the person isn't really here, is there a way? There may not be many of them, I don't know. Is there a way to incorporate that into the mix through the website, through electronic media? I don't even know enough to know about this, but that's another potential. But the website itself, we have, as I said, about 500 members. We have about 300 and give or take 300 some organizations that are represented in our membership. Our members, individuals, anyway, the 300 and some companies. So we have a website that has an organic search engine SEO rating. It's really high because we have legitimate connections with 350, whatever it is,
Yep.
companies, websites.
Yep.
But but that by itself is just a tool. It needs to be leveraged in a way that really will help people. So
No, it's real important that you brought that up for people interested, because it works on backlinks, and you connect their website. Their organization, their company is in your company, and that's three. Because I come from the digital marketing world, those links mean something. They're authoritative links that are linked through your website, so they do get a lot of SEO out of that, because that's how one of the ways that Google rates people. So
yeah.
that's very beneficial, because I noticed you list you every all of them are in there. What do you say? Like, I'm always curious that it's a flow. It's very, the room set up nice with tables. People come in, they get to know different people. What would you what does a kind of a person that wants to get extra exposure to their company, talk to our people about what a sponsor means?
Well, we only have opportunity for sponsors right now. We only have opportunity for about 10 to, I think, so what is it? 20 sponsors a year, maybe 22,
Mhm.
something like that. Not a huge number, really, percentage wise. So, and there's a $300 cost, which is really nominal if you think about the opportunity you have.
Mhm.
But but again, one of the frustrations is that not, I would say less than, I don't know, a small percentage of people who think about sponsoring, who do sponsor, don't take full advantage of what that return on the investment would be if they really prepare properly.
Mhm.
And by prepare properly, let me give you a simple example. If it's 120 people in a room, which there typically is one of our meetings, some people will take a PowerPoint they've done for a conference room for 8 people and try to show that in the same one, because they've already had the PowerPoint made. Well, first of all, the message of that PowerPoint may or may not be the right message. But second of all, if you've got a PowerPoint that looks good in a room that's about 20 feet by 10 feet, it's not going to look good in a room that's 50 feet or 60 feet deep.
Yeah.
Um, so, and that's one thing. The second thing is start over again in your mind. You think about, I've got this opportunity once a year, once every five, whatever. I've got this opportunity to communicate something to this many people, some of whom I know, most of whom I don't know and don't know me. What is it they need to know? What
Mhm.
do I want them to remember a week from this meeting, after this meeting is over? What is that they need to remember?
Mhm.
And create a message for that. It's worth the time and the trouble and the effort to do it, or there's no point in doing the sponsorship.
Yeah.
To me, it's not worth, it's a waste of time. So there are people that should sponsor. And if they do, they should do it right.
Yeah.
There are some people, if they're not going to do it, they shouldn't even bother.
Yeah.
The sponsorship is a tremendous opportunity to really in with you know to super communicate to a lot of people in a very effective way, but only if they do it. So what you saw, as I said yesterday when you were there with, and I don't mean to keep banging the drum, but Britt Edgy is an introvert. She does not like to speak in front of people. She provided a video that she had produced that was perfect. It was a
Mhm.
minute and a half,
Mhm.
and she killed it
Mhm.
because she was
I'll always
prepared.
remember that because the story through that video told a story, and
Yeah,
that's people love a story and the visual nature of the story. You're kind of looking, you're spotting yourself in the video because it's going around the room. It's fast because our brains have so much information that's coming at us. You got to think of simple and you got to think of memorable. My mom's 95, and so I would talk to my sisters up in Richmond. So I would talk to my sisters about the the way of just, if we can't capture conversations and record them, that we're going to miss things that we don't even know. So she's hard of hearing. So I'm up there talking to her, but I brought up something that she was very interested in. She was a semi pro basketball player. And
really.
I didn't know that. Here I had no idea. So once that came up, she lit up like I mean, you could see her whole disposition change
Yeah,
because it meant something to her. And when she would say something and she couldn't hear it or I don't remember it, she would cut it off right away. But when I would say something that would mean emotionally connecting, it's kind of like the humor thing when you're talking about your mom. They just appreciate that. Their
yeah,
disposition. So, the emotion that we have as human beings means something. When you're telling a story like Britt did, it's emotional story. I can see just the way it was put together. It was just great to
yeah,
see in a minute and a half. She didn't have to say that much, but
yeah.
just that, this is my calling card. This is my story. This
Right.
is what I can create for you that can
Hmm.
tell your story to people that you need to communicate a story.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to a personal side of John Butler. So, what do you like to do when you're not leading senior organizations and veterans organization? What do you like to spend your time doing?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out. My brother, who's 2 years older than I am and lives in the Atlanta area, we only recently started playing golf together, and I really enjoy that because it's a
Mhm,
time we get to just be together and hang out, no pressure, no agenda.
mhm,
Uh, we're not very good. Neither one of us are very good. We play fun golf,
mhm,
which is what his a term he came up with, which really means that we play on a course that's not too crowded and it's not too pressurized, and we both hit off the tee. And if I like his ball better than mine, we'll play from his ball
mhm.
on every hit. So it makes me better.
Yeah.
That made me play any better. And it makes me feel better about my game.
Yes. Yes.
So I enjoy doing that. And so volunteering with the veterans and with the ASCNN and with at the church and stuff. I mean, I I'm pretty I get I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty content. I need to be better. I need to be a better husband. I've got
That's something we all have to work on,
well,
certainly.
and then too, only recently our son and his wife and our brand new grandson moved next door to us, so we get to hang
Really?
out with our 17-month-old grandson, which is absolutely awesome. This is the first this past Christmas at 10 o'clock Christmas morning. I got to spend time around the Christmas tree with my grandson. I mean, it was awesome. I don't know when's the last time I've gotten a chance to do that. It was terrific. I
Yeah.
mean, so
No, I know what you mean. It's, when we get, as I think granddads is different than grandmothers, because when our kids were growing up, your career and you're just like focused on providing for the family, and so your mindset is in to providing for the family. But when you retire, when you get a little bit older, you can pour into your grandkids with the high with 100%. So it's kind of like the roles almost flip.
yeah,
It's like you just enjoy it because you were so busy with your career, but now your priorities are different. And so you can say, Christmas Day, you just took it all in. I mean,
yeah,
you're
it
sitting
was
there
terrific.
and what is it? What is it, a boy or girl?
He's a boy. Yeah,
So
Blake.
what does he call you?
Yeah, well, his name is Blake Bennett Butler, so he's like B cubed, but he's Blake.
Okay,
So
what does he
he
call
doesn't really
you?
talk. He doesn't really talk yet. So
Oh, really? So 17
yeah,
months. Yeah, it's
yeah.
getting
We have four other grandkids that are,
okay.
but two of them are just graduated from nursing school last year, and two of them are in college, and they call me Papa.
Papa.
They
Okay.
used to call me sometimes. Some of them call me Papa John, but they also call me Funny Papa. So
Oh, hey, I wonder why.
Yeah.
That's great. That is so good. So I want to be respectful of your time. So let's tell our viewers, like, oops, no, that's not the wrong one. That's your
That's okay. Call her.
you put her because I had it understand. So tell our viewers, how can they get a hold of you and your emails so they can know how to reach out to you?
So that's my cell number, and that's the number that works for me. I will tell you that I get so many spam calls. If I don't recognize your number, I probably won't answer. I have to call you back. I bet I get 10 or 12 a day. I don't know how to fix that, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Info at ascnn.org is a good thing to use. Ascnn.org's got some good information on the website. It's worth looking at.
Yeah.
You get a sense of ASCNN just by going to the website. But actually, the best way to learn what ASCNN is like is to come to a meeting, and we do allow guests to come. Frankly, we charge a $20 guest fee per person per meeting because we're a professional organization. We provide real value, frankly. But as a member, you can have multiple people in your organization be part of the organization on one membership. So you can join if you want. But um, it's a good group, and it's a bunch of great people. I will tell you, I did not create this. I did not promote this idea, but I have heard a lot that it is ASCNN really is kind of the who's who of the senior providers in Atlanta. I mean, that's kind of the best of the best is part of our organization. It turns out to be so.
Yeah. Well, I think when you create value, it just is that people gravitate to it, and so it's just a natural outcome of what the organization, you and the board, the people that are involved, what they do. It just naturally attracts people because
Yeah.
I always know when people are sharing your story, that's a good thing. Now, if
Oh
they're
yeah. Yeah.
if they're saying,
That's
like,
true.
I'm telling you, Rand told me at least like for 3 to 4 months, he kept telling me, you got to come over and meet John Butler. I mean, it was like, I was like, what is he, your cousin or something? It's like, why does somebody keep
Well,
saying that?
that's pretty strong.
Yeah,
That's pretty strong to hear that because Rand's a good guy. Rand
yeah.
is the
Well,
real deal. He's the real
you
deal.
just want somebody else to be talking about you. And I just, just to let you know, he kept after me for 3 months. I kept saying, I'm too busy. And then when I came, I was going, dang, did I make a mistake?
Well, I'm glad to get.
I waited too- I waited
I'm really glad we made that connection. And I
Yeah,
think the first time we met was at Church of the Apostles when we met there, and we had our meeting there. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Well,
So,
John, thank you so much. But what would you want our viewers to take home? What would be the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from our time together?
well, the main thing is if they have, first of all, if they have a senior in your life now, that doesn't necessarily mean you or your spouse, but maybe a parent or it could be an aunt or an uncle, whatever, or a good friend. It wouldn't hurt for that person to learn before there's a crisis what kind of resources are available to them. And frankly, most really our target audience as a senior provider organization or a company or that does it is the adult child of the senior.
Mm-hmm.
And the adult child of the senior usually has a lot going on in their life, and they don't think about, well, I've got to go learn about what resources are available
Mm-hmm.
until the Wednesday when the phone rings and that said, mom's coming home from the hospital tomorrow. I don't have a clue what to do to help her.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that they have to wait that long. That's what we struggled with when we did the senior resource fair at Church of the Apostles last fall. Is to try to get people to come to say, spend a couple of hours and learn enough to be at least be prepared to know what you don't know and what you need to know more about, so that when the time comes, you're ready for that.
Yeah.
So I would suggest one way to do that, maybe to come to an ASCNN meeting and just kind of get a sense of what all the resources are, or just go to the website and look and see what the resource. There's a directory there. And there's also a directory by category, and you can click on by category and you get a sense of all of the different categories of senior care type services there are out there. So at least you get a sense of, wow, there's a whole lot here that I might need to know something about someday, and then be prepared, hopefully before your hair's on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, prevention is the key to everything. Is like
Yeah.
thinking ahead. We don't always do a good job in there. But John, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with our viewers, a little of how they can, benefit by the aging population is aging, and we have a lot of resources that they need, and they got to know those resources. So thanks for
Yeah.
being with us and sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate the time. Appreciate it.